Next in our video series, we'll continue with our review of Java and programming languages in general. We'll do that by covering primitive data types, operators, and logical operators. Now, the main data types you'll see in your coding will be either integers, floating point values, characters, or Boolean values. Now, characters are simple. They're just single characters. You can put them together to form strings, which are simply an array of characters. We also have a Boolean data type, and they represent true or false. Then we have integers, and Java provides 4 different integer types to accommodate different sizes of numbers. Now, all your numbers can be signed, which means they can hold positive or negative numbers. So the integer types that we have have the following ranges. We have byte, which has a range of -128 to +127, and they take up 8 bits of memory. We then have short, and they have a range of -32,768 to +32,767, and they take up 16 bits of memory. We then have ints, and they have a large range. It's -2 billion to +2 billion. It's not exact, there's quite a bit, but they take up 32 bits of memory, and it's the most common integer type that you'll see. We then have longs, and their range is quite large, both positive and negative, and they take up 64 bits of memory. And if you want to look up the exact sizes of the ranges, you certainly can do that on the Oracle website. Let's just say that long should accommodate almost all your needs. Then lastly, our last type of data type is the floating point. And these are used to hold numbers with fractional parts, and they conform to the IEEE 754 standard. And there are 2 types of floating points. We have floats and doubles. And double is named a double because it actually provides double the precision of floats. So a float uses 32 bits to store data, whereas doubles use 64 bits. Now, when you're naming your numeric literals, there are a couple of naming conventions you have to be aware of. Now, you can place underscores in the numbers, but only between digits. You can't place underscores in any of the following places. So you can't have an underscore at the beginning or the end of a number. It can't be adjacent to a decimal point in a floating point literal. You can't have it prior to an F or an L suffix. And you can't place an underscore in positions where a string of digits is expected. Now, the Java language is also case sensitive. So in Java, if you have a variable called credit card number where the C in card and the N in number are uppercase, well, that will be different than if you had credit card number with all the characters uppercase. Now, convention indicates that your Java variables and method names should be using a lower camel case type of naming scheme, where you have lowercase for the first letter of the first element of a variable name, and then uppercase for the first letter of subsequent elements. So if we have, again, credit card number, the C in credit would be lowercase, then the C in card would be uppercase, and the N in number would be uppercase as well. And since we've been looking at numbers, this slideshow shows a list of the common operators. Now, most are common to any programming language, and we have a description of each of them. So we have the simple assignment operator, which is the equal sign. Then we have arithmetic operators, so we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the remainder operator. Then we have unary operators, where we have a plus, which is indicates positive, minus indicates negative. We also have plus plus, which is an increment operator, and that increments a value by 1. And then we have minus minus, which is a decrement operator, and decrements a value by 1. Then we have our exclamation point, which is a logical complement operator, and it simply inverts the value of a Boolean. So you place that at the start of a variable, of a Boolean variable. If the variable is true, then in this case it would mean it's false. Likewise, if it was false, then it would mean it was true. Now, operators also have precedence, and for a complete list of precedence, you can see there's a Java tutorial that you can look at on oracle.com/java.se/tutorial/java/nutsandbolts/operators.html. And one of the things you'll see in that notice about operators is that precedence can be overridden using parentheses. And lastly, today we'll look at some logical operators. Now, the equality and relational operators, they're pretty familiar. They're covered in most programming languages. We also have conditional operators, where if we have a conditional AND operator, where it only evaluates the second half of the statement if the first side is true. Conditional OR, similar to the conditional AND in that it will evaluate the second half of the statement if the first part is false. Then we also have ternary statements, which is just a shorthand for an if-else or an if-then-else statement. And of course, if you want to compare two objects, you can have an instance of comparison operator that compares to see if an object is the same as a specified type.